This happened about 3 years ago. So the apartment I used to live in was built in the middle of a regular neighborhood. The surrounding streets were full of average-sized American houses, with my complex kind of slapped in at random. My best friend came over to stay a couple of nights, and we spent one of the days she was visiting driving around town thrift shopping. Being in a used goods shopping kind of mood, we decided to keep our eyes peeled for any local yard or garage sales. As luck would have it, we found a sign for exactly that on the road my apartment was on. I suggested that we park at my complex and just walk to the sale. Now, the sign was honestly the first odd thing that we noticed. When we first saw the sign, it looked more pathetic than creepy. It was an old yard sign from a past election. It had a white piece of paper bearing the word sale and the house's address taped over it. And when I say taped, I mean little pieces of duct tape that were slapped haphazardly all over the thing. But my friend and I just kind of attributed this to someone with no sense of presentation, and we decided to check it out anyway. So we walked towards the address listed, and about halfway there, it started raining lightly. Not hard enough to really need an umbrella, but enough that we wondered if the sale was even still set up. I reasoned that if it was a garage sale, it's in a garage, and therefore safe from the rain and probably still going on. Besides, it was only about a 5-minute walk, and we might as well just pass by the house since we were already out. Not much later, we reached the house listed on the sign. This place didn't even have a garage, and there was nothing set up outside indicating any kind of a sale. In fact, all that was outside the house is a car that was marked for sale. So my friend and I assumed that they packed up from the light rain, and we were about to head home when we noticed something on the door. I reluctantly stepped onto the porch to get a better view, and we found a sign taped up stating, "The sale's inside, come on in." Below it was some kind of official-looking paper, and although I couldn't actually read it due to the text being in Spanish, it looked like either an eviction notice or an indication that the house was already vacant. Either way, it was sketchy, and I power-walked off that porch right then and there. I glanced into the front window as I walked, and although I can't say for certain because I wasn't right up against the glass and I was still moving, it looked like the house was completely empty. I didn't catch sight of any furniture in the living room or what I could see of the kitchen. I'm not really sure what was going on in this sale, but it was definitely enough to spook the two of us. I actually made a point to drive back to the house twice in the following days, and at no point did it ever look like someone was living there. So I really don't know what was going on, but it was creepy. Last summer, I decided to have a garage sale before moving to a new city. I was trying to get rid of some things that I no longer needed, and honestly, I was just looking to make a little extra cash as well. I had all kinds of items out: old books, clothes, kitchen gadgets, and a few bigger things. One of the items I was selling was a brand new pair of designer sandals, still in their original box. They were a gift from my ex who had brought them back from Vegas where he cheated on me. I wasn't going to wear them and I just wanted them gone. They were worth at least $200 to $300, but I was only asking $5 for them. It was a great deal, and I was hoping somebody would know their worth and get a steal. Around mid-morning, a woman walked up to my table. She immediately started looking at the sandals, and I could tell that she was interested. I mentioned the $5 price, and she immediately started negotiating. She offered me $2. I told her no, this was a firm price, especially since they were brand new, never worn, and still had the tags on them. She didn't like that. She argued with me, getting louder and more insistent. I tried to keep my cool, explaining that $5 was already a really low price for such expensive shoes, but she wasn't having it. She started to get really heated, swearing at me and yelling in a language I couldn't understand. It was loud and uncomfortable, especially with other people in the yard watching the whole thing. Finally, she threw the sandals down on the table and stormed off. I just stood there, picking up the shoes, feeling embarrassed by the whole thing. A few people who had been watching the exchange made comments about how crazy she was, and it felt like it was over. But just when I thought it was done, she came back. This time, she wasn't done. She had a giant muscular man with her, I guess her husband. He was huge, at least 6 feet tall, and easily 3 times my size. He must have been waiting in the car or something, because they came right up to me, and he immediately started yelling at me. He said I had to give the shoes to his wife for free. The way he was shouting at me, it felt like he was trying to intimidate me. I'm 25 years old, about 120 pounds, and I felt like there was no way I could stand up to this guy physically if things got worse. His wife was also screaming, trying to grab the shoes from my hands. It was honestly terrifying, but there was no way I was giving them the shoes now with them being so rude about it. I stood my ground and yelled back, telling them to back off. It was getting out of control, and I thought I might have to call someone. 2 women I didn't know saw what was going on and walked over to stand beside me. They pulled out their phones and started recording the scene. I think that's what finally scared the man off. He saw the cameras and stopped yelling, grabbed his wife's arm and tried pulling her away. I don't know if they would have gotten violent or what would have happened if those women hadn't stepped in, but I was so relieved when they left, and I never had to deal with them again. After that day, I promised myself I would never do a garage sale by myself again. It was just way too much drama, and honestly, I don't think I could handle something like that again. I had been planning my garage sale for a week. My place was filled with stuff that I didn't need, and my PS4 was sitting in the corner of the living room gathering dust, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to sell it. I loved that thing, but it had been months since I had time to play, so I put it out at my garage sale with a high price tag, thinking that if someone overpaid for it, I'd be fine to let it go, but otherwise I would just keep it. I set everything up outside in my driveway early Saturday morning. I had a few old video games next to the PS4 also. People came and went throughout the day picking up this or that. Most were friendly, but then this lady showed up. She was around middle-aged, maybe early 40s, wearing a big floppy hat and oversized sunglasses. She walked straight to my video game section. There was a stack of games for Xbox and PS4 that I was ready to let go of, but the prices were non-negotiable. These were still good games, even though I was done with them. She started picking through the PS4 games, looking at the titles like she knew what she was doing. Then she asked me, how much for the PS4 ones? $10 each, I said. She scoffed at me, saying these were old games now and they should be like $1. It's a garage sale, but I wasn't giving away games I paid $60 for just $1, so I stood my ground. She made a big show of putting the games down and sighing dramatically. Then she muttered something about me taking advantage of people before turning to leave. The last thing she said on her way out was, your PS4 is going to be sitting here for a while. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm. Because nobody's going to pay what you want for that, she said. I knew that was most likely true for the PS4, but the rest of the stuff there was fairly priced. I was getting tired of the conversation, and she was clearly angry. I just wanted to get through the sale and enjoy my Saturday. She walked off, but I could feel her eyes on me as I continued to arrange stuff on the tables. I figured she'd be long gone soon, but surprisingly she stayed in the neighborhood, walking past my house a couple of times, which I thought was strange, but whatever. It wasn't until later that night when things really went downhill. Now, long after I had gone inside, around 11:30 p.m., I heard the faintest sound outside. I got up to check things out. The outside light was on, and I could see the shape of someone standing near my side door. I couldn't believe it, but the woman from the garage sale earlier was trying to break into my house. The lady apparently knew how to pick a lock, or at least thought she knew how to pick a lock, and was attempting to do so at my side door. Honestly, I have never seen a more bizarre scene in my life. This lady who was in the same outfit from earlier, who looked like a middle-aged suburban mom, was trying to break into my house. Obviously, she could have been armed, but just her overall appearance did not look threatening at all. I remember thinking to myself, how stupid do you have to be to try something like this over some video games? I assumed that's why she was there. Maybe it was to try to rob something more expensive like my PS4. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't call the cops because she was at my door, and if she actually knew how to pick a lock, she would be inside my house before the cops could show up. I realize now it was kind of bold, but once again, this lady did not look like a threat at all. It just seemed like she was really stupid. I grabbed an old baseball bat I owned and opened up the curtain on the window next to the door. Yelling through the glass, I told her that if she didn't leave immediately, I was going to come out there and beat her head with a baseball bat. The message was received, and she scurried back off to wherever she had come from, and she might even live in my neighborhood for all I know. I never did see that lady again, and I can't help but wonder what other crazy things she's done in her life. Probably some other dumb choices. It was about 4 months ago when I stumbled across a vintage mirror at a yard sale. It caught my eye immediately. It was solid wood and had this old world charm to it. I asked the lady running the sale how much it was, and she told me she didn't really care for it. She said I could take it if I bought something else, which I did. The first thing I did when I got home was wash it. I set it down in the kitchen and started cleaning. Right away the lights flickered above me, but I didn't think much of it. The kitchen lights had always been a bit finicky. The rest of the evening was uneventful, and my cats enjoyed playing by the mirror and running behind it. The next few weeks were when things started to get unsettling. I would catch glimpses of strange shadows in the mirror, but when I turned it over, there was nothing there. I thought maybe it was just my imagination, so I ignored it. But then my dad came over and told me that he had seen things in the mirror too. I was glad I wasn't going crazy, and I moved the mirror out of my room and placed it in the hallway, hoping it would be better there. It kept happening though. I would drape a cloth over the mirror to try to block whatever was going on. By morning, the cloth would always be gone. It didn't just fall on the floor. It would be far away from the mirror, sometimes in the living room. Other times, it would even be in my dad's bedroom. It felt like someone or something was messing with me. I kept the mirror in the hallway closet after that, but the strange things didn't stop. I'd find cabinet doors open late at night, even when I was alone. I know my cats couldn't open them because they were too high for them to reach, and the shadows in the hallway, they kept appearing, often when I was by myself. I'd see things that weren't there, moving quickly in the corner of my eye, but when I looked, nothing was there. The most terrifying thing happened about a week ago. I was in the kitchen and I heard a knock behind me. Not just any knock, but a sharp, deliberate knock, coming from the window directly behind me. I live on the 3rd floor of my building, and the only window with balcony access is in the living room, far from where I was standing. I turned to check the window, but there was nothing there. No one was outside, obviously, as we were way too many feet up in the air. I have no idea if anything real and physical could have made that sound, but I've never been so shaken in my life. Since then, I put the mirror up online to try to sell it and get rid of it, but as you know, the process can take a while. I wanted to try to make money off it, but I might just end up tossing it if nobody buys it soon. The nightmares are the worst part. Almost every night I have a dream which has the mirror in it at some point. I'm worried that if I try to dispose of the mirror, whatever has been haunting my place might get angry or something like that. I'm scared to get rid of it by tossing it out as trash instead of selling it, but maybe that doesn't matter. I don't know. I'd like to share an event that happened a short time before COVID. My wife and I like to go to garage and estate sales where we live out in California. One day, we followed the signs to an estate sale in a poor area. As we got out of the car, I could tell there wasn't going to be a ton of stuff there, as the person who passed away didn't really have anything of significant value, but we checked it out anyways. I usually head towards the bedrooms looking for office supplies. I made my way down the hallway, and I noticed one of the rooms had a lot of Christmas decorations. I also noticed that each table had different types of decorations. At least 4 or 5 different tables were there. I looked at one table and it was full of decorations that could be hung on the walls. Another one had tree decorations. I visually scanned each table in the room, and I realized that I was the only person in there. This is very unusual for any estate sale, but as soon as I realized this, I looked back to the table to my right. This table was full of decorations that you could place on the mantle or at the dinner table, items that could be placed on top of any flat surface throughout the house. Right smack in the middle of that table, this frosted chrome-looking Santa Claus started really shaking by itself. Not just vibrating, but it was shaking pretty good. I stared at it long enough to ask myself, am I really seeing this happen? I was looking hard enough to know that this specific item was absolutely not supposed to be doing that. As close as everything else was around it, nothing else was moving. In my investigation of the shaking ornament, I didn't hear the older woman in the room behind me. The older woman must have seen the ornament shaking also, because she commented how that was the strangest thing she had ever seen in her life. She then proceeded to ramble about how some of the ornaments were really nice though. I listened to her for a bit, and then ended the conversation as politely as I could, and I left her to mumble over the ornaments as I went to find my wife. I stayed with my wife for the rest of the time as she looked around a bit longer, and my wife actually ended up buying an ornament. On the way out of the house, we paid for the ornament and asked the worker if the old lady bought a ton of ornaments since she seemed to really like them. To my surprise, the worker taking the money stated there was no one in the house besides my wife and I. She showed me a picture of the woman who owned the house but had passed away 2 months prior, and it was the woman who had been in the room with me looking at the ornaments. Apparently, she loved her ornaments so much that her ghost had been marveling over them at her own estate sale. I hope more people bought her ornaments before the estate sale was over. I'm sure it would have made the old lady happy.